Good morning, guys. It's Mr. Holding here, and this quick video is an explanation of your 10 Science A experimental report on titration, so finding the concentration of an unknown solution. So um, there will be given two things at the start of the report. First is your task sheet, like always, and we're going to go through that in a moment. And the second thing is your report is a blank report with some guidance through. So we'll go through both of these very quickly now to give you an indication. So as always, the most important thing is that you read through the whole lot carefully, seeking out information. So I would strongly encourage you to get yourself a highlighter, go through and highlight specific parts so that you don't forget them later on. Okay, so first of all, we've got our subject matter and task instructions. Titration is a method of analysis that will allow you to determine the precise endpoint of a neutralization reaction and therefore the precise quantity of reactant in the titration flask. So you'll talk to your teacher and they'll explain what all that means and go from there. So the usual information is on the front of them, the due dates depending on when you're doing this in your class, and then we move on to the next section. Okay, so it's written, you're going to have to publish it, and should be between 700 and 800 words. You'll be given, we're starting very early this term. Okay, when we do it, you'll be doing it in a number of steps. So in addition to this, you'll most likely be doing a preparation lesson, a practice titration in class. Okay, so you do that, and then generally you'll start, and you'll have a lesson on background. Have 3 lessons to do the titration, because you're doing 3 sets, 3 different unknown samples, and you'll have 3 lessons to work through that. Now, some of you might finish that early, and that's fine. Others might use the full 3 lessons, and that's fine too. And then we'll go through and manipulate the results, and we'll talk about that and go from there. Okay, the other usual stuff, so you need to sign your authentication statement, the assessment policy, okay, and then basic information about the prac. So the acid we're talking about is acetic acid and sodium hydroxide. So we're going to be given a known quantity and a known concentration of sodium hydroxide, and it's our goal to work out the concentration of 3 different acetic acids, which is vinegar. Okay, a neutralization reaction, meaning we form a salt and water. Okay, so our aim is to determine the concentration of acetic acid in some commercial vinegar samples by titration against a standard sodium hydroxide solution. Here are our materials. Our procedure is there, so it's very important you read through that carefully. Again, your teacher will help you with that. And then finally, we have our marking scheme here. Okay, and this is something I think is generally underutilized by us in classes sometimes, where tells you exactly what you need to do. All right, and it uses very key words. Okay, so if you're looking to be an A standard student, you should be referring to this and making sure that in your title and introduction that you're doing these things. All right, that in your aim and method you formulate a valid aim. Okay, which specifically states the purpose of the experiment in relation to independent dependent variables. So it's very clear what you need to do for an A, or a B, or a C. So use what's provided. That's why we put it there. Okay, so that's very quickly going through the task sheet. So now let's have a look at the report that you're going to be given. Okay, so this is the blank report you're going to get, so you need to update this with all your usual details. Okay, find an interesting picture of titration or the end point of titration, which when we talk about you'll know about, and then start with your introduction. Okay, so like always, your introduction needs to give the history and background of the topic. So we're not talking specifically about in this experiment we are going to do A, B and C. It's more about we're looking at vinegar. So what is vinegar? How is it found? How is it an acid or a base? Is it all those types of information? You need to give some background information about what neutralization is and what it means to neutralize an acid or a base. What are the products? What are the reactants? Those type of things. You need to provide a detailed explanation of what is occurring in the chemical reaction in this experiment. Okay, so like we had a look in the over here, this is an equation, okay, something like that, explaining it. All right, And the important thing also is you need to add credibility to your work by using in-text referencing and a bibliography at the end of your assignment. So in-text referencing, I'll put up a guide up, which you're welcome to follow. I tend to encourage people to use the word, the review thing through here. There's a citation, and I explain that in another video that I encourage you to watch. But it's important you use it, okay? So I would be encouraging you to use absolute minimum of 5 to 6 sources for this. Okay, why is that? Well, it shows that you are well read, shows that you've researched the topic well, and it shows that your work has credibility because you've referred to a number of sources, and a number of experts. So the important thing is obviously you use experts. You don't just look at things like Wikipedia, which is not a credible source at all. Okay, so that's the introduction. Okay, and you can start that straight away. Okay, and I encourage you to get that out of the way early. All right, maximum word limit of 500 or thereabouts. Okay, so the aim. What is the purpose of our experiment? Okay, like always, we want to determine something. So the example given is to determine the concentration of acetic acid in some commercial vinegars by titration against a standard sodium hydroxide solution. Seems like a pretty good aim. Hypothesis. It is hypothesized that if the independent variable, so you need to work out what the independent variable is. All right. What are we changing? What are we specifically changing? Then the dependent variable will do something. So you may look at, I probably can't tell you, but you need to work that out. Talk about what the independent variable is and what the dependent variable is in this particular assignment or experiment, and then formulate a hypothesis about what you think will occur. Okay, keep it short and simple. Your method, materials and equipment, is all listed here. But remember, they need to be bullet points. Okay, so this is listed one after another. This is just for your benefit, but you need to then go and put it in correct scientific format, which is bullet points. Your variables, okay, identifying them. So identifying these will assist you in doing the hypothesis. And then the procedure. Okay, like baking a cake, order is important. So of course, when we do procedure, it needs to be numbered. Okay, so what's the first step, then the second step, then the third step? All right, and you would have heard me use the example before of baking a cake. There's no point putting the eggs and flour and water in an oven, baking it for an hour, and then pulling it out and mixing it and expecting the cake to be made. You need to crack the eggs, mix the flour, add the water, stir it, then put it in the oven, and you end up with hopefully a tasty cake at the end. Same thing with this. You need to do it in a specific order, which is why it's important to number your particular steps. Remember, third person and impersonal. Third person past tense. Okay, so 10 mils acre of diluted vinegar was transferred into the conical flask. All right, and when I say impersonal, we don't use things like I, we, me, or our. Okay, we don't say I transferred aqualot across. You say the aqualot was transferred across, or the beaker was filled, or the Bunsen burner was lit. All right. You need to provide a risk assessment. Okay, so here are some examples. You may not be using these, so you may need to think about what you've done, what materials we've used, what procedures we've done, and what possible risks, what controls you can put in place, and how to deal with the situation if something happens. So you may be using glass. The control is to due care and concern, responsive incidents occurs, notify the teacher, remain calm, seek help. Okay. Now your results and analysis section is here. You've been given an example of 3 tables here to use for your 3 samples. Okay, so you need to understand how to use these, the starting volume, ending volume, and the overall titer, or the amount used in the titration, work out an average. These brackets here actually indicate concentration. So when you see the square brackets around something, it means concentration of vinegar. So you're trying to work out the concentration of the vinegar, and this is the sample used, and then you have to work out the actual concentration. Okay, and your teacher will talk about this and go through how to do those calculations. And then your analysis. Okay, once you have your results, you've done your experiment, it's about sitting down and calculating the concentration of diluted vinegar and then the original undiluted vinegar. Okay, so the vinegar that we use is actually a dilution. So we need to work out the concentration of that diluted vinegar and then work out what the original concentration is. And again, your teacher will go through this, and we may even put up a little video explaining how to do this as well. You need to go through, provide your your explanation, provide your working, okay, and where appropriate, tables, graphs, and pictures as well. Okay, so remember, during your results and your analysis, the most important thing is that you represent your information and explanation as simply and as clearly as possible. Okay, by having 15 graphs that make no sense or the teacher has to try and decipher through isn't the goal here. The goal here is for someone to look at your report very simply and go, oh, okay, that's a trend that occurred, or I can very clearly see that A was more concentrated than B, which was more concentrated than C. Okay, so you want to actually do it simply, and I encourage you to show your parents, show your boarding supervisor, show someone at home and say, hey, can you have a look at this and tell me if it makes sense? If they can look at it and go, yeah, oh, I can understand that, and tell you the trend or tell you the results, fantastic. If they can't, you need to go back to the drawing board and think, okay, how can I simplify this and represent my data better? Finally, your discussion, you need to do interpretation of the data. Okay, so going through here, think carefully, make your statement, explain the statement, and refer to evidence. Okay, so there's explanations here. Point out any errors. Okay, so what were problems? Were there any measurement issues? Was the operator error in terms of your understanding of how to do titration? Was that an issue? Okay, I'd suggest it probably will be, given some of us are doing this for the first time. Think about how you could improve this for next time. Okay, think about that fundamental errors with the experimental procedure as a whole, and think how could you make your results more reliable? All right, same thing there. And finally, you need to write a conclusion. Results of the experiment showed that, and then state what you find. Doesn't have to be huge. You should refer back to your aim and hypothesis and conclude there. Now, finally, as I touched on earlier, your references. Okay, you should needs to be APA 6. Okay, again, I encourage people to use Word, but there is other sources to do it via the library website. So either way is fine, as long as you end up with a bibliography in APA format and you're in-text referencing. So the difference between in-text referencing is in your introductions, you'll be writing away. You'll make a statement that you got from someone, and then you'll just put their surname and the date of whatever it's in, and then just keep writing. That's in-text reference. Your reference or your bibliography is at the bottom here, where you sit there and you list with all the details. So who the author was, when the article was written, the name of the article, the name of the journal or the website. All that information that goes into your reference list. And again, there'll be something else posted for this. All right. Overall, I hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions, of course, come and see me in person.